one of the criticisms that comes up relatively frequently is I'm both a misogynist, a red pill right-wing misogynist, and also a blue-pilled left-wing cuck at the same time.
Superposition.
It's absolutely thinking in a superposition. But you'll see the comments on the same video.
Yeah.
You'll see them underneath the same video. And that is one of the things, as somebody who not fears criticism capture, but certainly would be a poster boy for criticism capture being warping. And it's something that I need to account for. I do particularly well with positive reinforcement, with enthusiasm, with excitability.
Can I give you my take on this? Because I think this is one of the most interesting things that you just put your finger on. What you're talking about are cognitive clusters. So, for example, when I was this is the first time I learned about it, I was on stage with Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris. And if you look at the clusters of comments on that video from the Masonic Theater in San Francisco, they were like, thank God Eric was there, because otherwise we'd be hearing about, is there a God? Yes, no, which is boring as hell. Why is Eric on stage? We're all here just to hear the atheist debate the Orthodox Jew.
Mm-hmm.
So what you learn about is that the cognitive clusters have no awareness that they're part of this dyadic relationship of what you are and how they process. So, for example, I'm colorblind, as is my brother.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
the first thing that everyone says to a colorblind person, what color is that over there? You go, yeah. I don't fucking...
Well, it's very interesting being colorblind, because the terminology is bad. You see color, but you don't have the same... it's not like the world is black and white. It's just yellow or green. I can't tell. So depending upon what color blindness you have, you see different numbers in the pebble tests that they give you. So the question of what is the pebble, it's basically Mindstorm versus Green Needle or the dress, or any one of these things where people factor themselves out of the equation and they imagine that they are in a universal position as consumers of whatever it is that you just said. Right? It's like, why does he spend so much time on the stuff he's discussed on every other podcast? Why does he just jump in as assuming everybody knows exactly what this is about? Your audience is unaware of the fact that they've been cognitively clustered. And so when you read these things, you're not reading about you. You're reading about dyadic relationships with different cognitive clusters, and you'll find the same, like one of the things that I know is that a lot of people don't agree with the dialectic. They believe that there's a thesis and there's an antithesis, and there's no synthesis. There's just people sitting on the fence who are pussies for not having a position.
Mm.
And so every time I attempt to synthesize things, because things are in a superposition and I'm trying to talk about the nuance, they have an idea of, he never says anything. Because to that person, saying something is to say, Trump is the man. You got to go with Kamala. Otherwise, you're just, those sorts of people in that poll, for example, the cluster that believes that pregnancy doesn't change in any meaningful way relative to abortion are a meta-cluster, including pro-life and pro-choice.
Yep.
What we need to do more of is to understand what it is that we're reading as feedback. I know, for example, that many people find me overbearing. And it's not that I don't see that in myself, but nobody ever asks me, do you see in yourself that you can be overbearing in conversation with? Totally. Well, if you can see it, why do you do it? Interesting question. In general, I find that sometimes I try not to be overbearing at all. And I feel like most conversations end up in a conversation I've already been in. I'm old enough that I'm just bored, because I think that humans in general are a large language model.
That's one of the reasons Naval hasn't done another podcast properly since Rogan. He said, I don't want to say the same things twice.
Maybe. But I guess what I find is that people don't ask about other people's levels of self-awareness.
Oh, I love asking that. I love asking that. That's one of the reasons that your question was so interesting. There's a concept familiar or similar to what you were talking about before called tilting at windmills. An online stranger doesn't know you. All they have are a few vague impressions of you, too meager to form anything but a phantasm. So when they attack you, they're really just attacking their own imagination, and there is no need to take it personally.
My brother has a version of this that I think is brilliant, where he says that the person who's just cut you off in traffic, all you know about them is that they cut you off in traffic. You don't know about their work in pediatric oncology. And so until you actually have a fuller position, you don't realize that you've cut somebody off in traffic and been cut off in traffic, and the only data point you have represents the entire human.
Of course, yeah. A combination of fundamental attribution error and a bunch of others. There's an equivalent that I learned from Instagram of all places, which I think sort of shows this relativity or our assumption that our position is the correct one. Every guy that fancies girls with bigger boobs than mine is a chubby chaser. Every guy that fancies girls with smaller boobs than mine is a pedophile. That basically you have yourself as the reference point, and then anything outside of that on either side is some perturbment.
Why do you think this is? Why do you think that we don't actually, I'll be honest, almost no conversation in my life moves above the level where I could set a large language model to have it?
Good question. So I think we have these social mores and dynamics typically that we follow by not wanting to look silly or play outside of an area that we know. A lot of the time it causes us to go back to scripts that we've run before that we knew kind of worked. So I think confidence, sort of social confidence, has a lot to do with it. Thinking is expensive and it's hard, and genuinely trying to be generative during a conversation is tough. A lot of the time people are uncomfortable with silence, which causes them to push answers out when sort of sitting back would have maybe allowed them to come up with something new. If you're trying to go quicker, your direction can be less precise and you can move in a less agile way. You're just trying to get the things out as opposed to giving yourself a little bit of a beat. This is why the best definition of a best friend is who can you spend time in silence with without it feeling uncomfortable, and who can you be around with the least filter. I think those two together are a really good example of who are your people. In other news, this episode is brought to you by AG1. In my quest for the best greens drink on the planet, I went through just about every single option, and after a year of testing, I found AG1. 3 years later, I still use it every single day because it is so much more than just greens. It is the most comprehensive, highly tested, and rigorously formulated supplement I've ever found. With one single scoop of AG1, you're replacing multiple health supplements like multivitamins, digestive aids, immune supports, and more. It is NSF certified, meaning that even Olympic athletes can use it. There is a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you've heard about AG1, you're thinking about trying it, you can buy it completely risk-free. And if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get a year's free supply, vitamin D3 and K2, 5 free AG1 travel packs, and that 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. That's all of this. drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Eric, you can watch the entire episode in all its glory right now. Go on.